Good morning, noon, or night to those of you who've clicked on my first public video. My name's Crow, and I've decided to do a little video on my indie book, Our Future Fantasy, just to try and promote it better on this big wide web. I've been working on this book for, well, almost 6 years now. The first drawing I ever made that turned into this whole lot of work was sometime in 2020, and it's infested my brain since. For this assumedly first video into my book, I just wanted to go over the main characters, since that's always what people want to see first. Who to get attached to, who gives them brain worms, the works. I've already started drawing the main character in the background, so without cutting her time too short, let's get into my rambling. Peach is the main character of my book, and she's the character that started everything with that one drawing back in 2020 ish. Proto Peach is incredibly different from current day Peach in several ways, but that's the nature of writing. First drafts rarely resemble their final draft counterparts, and Peach is no different. If you want to see some of the oldest art I have of her, there's my old posts on my Tumblr, including the one specifically made for Our Future Fantasy. And despite all the changes, Peach's overall personality has remained mostly static. Bubbly, outgoing if anxious due to her abusive upbringing, and always wanting to help people. Peach wants to love. She's just been burned so many times that feeling safe enough to love is hard for her. She's from our world, from Earth, and ends up getting magicked into a world that she could only dream of. Magical, peaceful, for now, and overall a place where she can finally heal from the trauma of this one. The whole story is an escapism fantasy that's been heavily inspired by the isekai genre, without all the weird shit that way too many isekais get into. Slavery, fantasy racism, the works. Peach, at the center of all these self love and healing themes I have, is meant to showcase a character who wants to be in this new world, who gleefully gives up Earth because who wouldn't? I certainly would. She's heavily based on me in several ways, being queer, trans, and severely depressed due to the state of the world. She didn't mean to fall into Elcian, but she's certainly taking it in stride. With new friends, new family, and a whole new world to explore. All the stress she had doesn't get erased, but it's at least lessened. Speaking of Peach's character in more specifics again, though, she's a freshly graduated 18-year-old from no US town in specific. She's pulled through the Fey realm into Elcian due to undead spirits called Faer, because within our future fantasy, Fey are basically extinct, and all that remains of them are the quite literal spirits of nature they've become. But because she was pulled through the Fae's realm, she ends up getting marked as one of them. And it leads to some issues when she starts to try and use the magic that exists in the world, which there's a small lore doc about magic on my Tumblr. After being pulled through, she meets two characters in specific. Mother Morgana, an ancient looking elven woman, and her daughter, who's another main character. Imani is Mother Morgana's daughter that's a year older than Peach. She wasn't actually added to the character roster until a draft or two after the first draft, which is actually up on AO3 in all its terrible glory. She's a witch, one of the four officially recognized covens that exist within Elcian, and a damn good one at that. Able to memorize her potions with ease due to being homeschooled by her adoptive mother since she was a young child, and her natural affinity for memorizing things quickly. Admittedly, Imani is a comic relief character, but that doesn't make her stupid. On the contrary, she's quite smart. She's just got a Joker kind of personality to keep things light and not too stressful. She also ends up being Peach's sponsor to become a Hollow Hunter, a job in the world due to the fact that while magic isn't necessarily volatile, it can still be dangerous to use since it requires removing your soul. Those who lose their souls end up becoming hollows, or worse. And it's up to hollow hunters like Imani to keep people safe. The entire main cast of Our Future Fantasy are hunters. Most of the other cast have just been hunting together longer than Peach has. Despite being so new to the cast in terms of which draft she was added in, Imani really helps round out the characters. She extends Peach her first friendship after falling into Elcian, and eventually the two become closely akin to sisters as the plot thickens into later arcs. She's also who introduces Peach to the rest of the cast since they're already her friends and coworkers, all of whom Imani trusts with her life. She's a person who really appreciates her friends and enjoys their company even while not on the job. One of the other characters Peach meets pretty early on in the book, as in chapter 2 or so, is Fable Grimm. Fable's been a part of the cast since the very first draft, but like Peach, she's changed quite a bit. Originally, she was just a red-headed bard, another coven, and while those specific details haven't changed, nor has her personality undergone that much transformation, she's just as outgoing as Peach, just in a more maternal fashion as the eldest of the group, by only a few years. Her backstory and details have had specific changes. While writing the first draft, I basically pulled the dominant religion that exists in Elcian out of my ass, which is fine, it's the first draft, but I just shoved Fable into it to try and have a main character to give more specifics to the readers. I've since expanded the religion, called occultism, which worships the three moons that orbit the fantasy planet as sons of their creation god, who is dead. The world/universe of Elcian exists in what is the remnants of their creator's body and mind. They also view the eyes as windows to the soul, which is why Fable veils her eyes. Fable's backstory as well has been changed. She's only 21, but she's already a widower after marrying her high school sweetheart, who was killed by a hollow. This spurred her into becoming a hollow hunter, and now she has a protege of her own after Imani sponsored her too. They'd been childhood friends, and Imani saw how hard she took the death of her husband and wanted to help her. But in some early versions of the drafts, after I added Imani, she and Fable had some romantic tension. I don't necessarily write this into the final draft anymore, but I'll never disparage anyone who chooses to ship my OCs because I want everyone else to have the same kind of brainworms I have about these guys. Alira Hecate is undoubtedly Peach's love interest. Taking a look at my Tumblr or Blue Sky art will immediately tip you off to that fact. They've been Peach's love interest since the early days, while I was still hammering out the first draft. But that doesn't mean they're one dimensional. They have a character outside of the slow burn romance with Peach. Alira is one of the descendants of the first four humans who were granted magic by the Fae, Mila Hecate, who founded the Wizards' Coven that Alira is also a part of. A noble family line that they tried to live up to too early. Since magic requires splitting one's soul out of your body and placing it into a wand, Alira tried to do that by themselves and paid the price. Now they're almost completely blind, have painful magical scars running across their entire body, and they lost several limbs due to the magical mutations that becoming a hollow entails. They survived as a human, but at a cost. Nowadays, Alira is incredibly blunt, both due to the humbling experience of their youth, but also due to their autism. It's never expressly said in the book, but as an autistic man myself, I write Alira pretty clearly to have sensory issues that their friends try to keep in mind. But this doesn't mean they're an asshole. They just don't see a point in lying or sugarcoating things because it doesn't actually help anyone. Alira still cares for their friends, cares to see them succeed, cares to see them safe. And as I said, Peach and them have a slow burn type romance, both due to Peach's refusal to acknowledge her emotions as much as possible, and Alira just not realizing what a crush actually feels like to have on someone, since they'd been isolated most of their life until finally going to their ancestors' magical school to learn how to become a hollow hunter when they were a teen. Ambrose Dahlia is Alira's cousin, both related to Mila Hecate. Ambrose, however, is a bit more of a show-off compared to Alira. He never had the same humbling experience, and he certainly didn't learn from his cousins. Since he has an ego with a temper to match, he ends up coming off far more as an asshole than Alira's bluntness ever could. He believes his way is the right way, and he believes he's never wrong. Most of that being inspired by the fact that he's technically an oracle, an unofficial covenant Alcyon that uses almost exclusively divination magic. On paper, Ambrose is a knight, a coven founded by his and Alira's other ancestor, another one of the four. But apart from him using a custom sword that houses his wand and wearing armor, he doesn't necessarily embody what a knight is. He fights, but he's always one step ahead. And in many people's eyes, this is viewed almost as cheating. Thankfully, his friends see it as a boon against the hollows they fight on the regular, since they can be quite unpredictable. But Ambrose can see all those outcomes and fight against them. Ambrose's family are nobles, just like Alira's, his grandfather having been the one to found the Oracle Coven. His father currently runs it, and he's currently the next in line to run the coven once his father retires. But Ambrose is not the eldest child of his family. That right falls to his sister, Oleandra, who he hasn't talked to in years since she left the family and essentially disappeared. The final main character is the one who Peach meets last, since he's still in school at Hecate's School for the Arcane. At 16, Karis Blackstone is Fable's protege and is another bard. Though unlike his sponsor, he focuses less on dance and more on poetry. Very dark poetry. But it works in his favor since his favorite spell is literally just blows you up with mind. Karis, like Imani, was added in later drafts, a young, bright-eyed character who I wrote to remind me of my younger self. Karis is almost like a love letter to all the weird teens who, despite all their weirdness, are still able to be kind and compassionate. He ends up being like everyone's younger brother, annoying at times, but you still don't let anything bad happen to him. And though he has his own secrets, and he's very good at keeping them, he's also very good at keeping other people's secrets, since he's much more of a quiet observer than somebody who speaks his mind all the time. I don't have much to say about him, but that's more so because I like holding this guy in my hands like a little stress ball. All the feelings and thoughts I have about him are very abstract and equate to he's not my favorite character, but he's a close second. Ultimately, he helps pull the cast together in ways I can't really describe, but if I removed him, it just wouldn't feel right. I can't imagine the book or the cast without this weird guy anymore. He's like a stray cat I fell in love with. And that's the full main character cast. There are obviously side characters that get more love, like Mother Morgana, but if somehow this video does well enough, which is like 50 to 100 views to me, I might get into the side characters and specifics of the plot without hitting full spoiler territory. And I know I've spoiled some things because I've been working on this story for so long that I've just drawn art for those plot points, like Peach X Alira being canon. But I also don't want to spoil everything, which includes the antagonists of the book, kind of. I have art of them posted, but that's besides the point. I'll just think about doing a video on the villains too, since their cast list is just as large, if not a bit larger than the main character's cast list. And if you enjoy the sound of the book, it's currently being uploaded in bi-weekly intervals on my Neocities. The first draft is still up on Archive of Our Own, and if you prefer visual media, I have the first chapter drawn out as a comic on my Ko-fi, from when I was planning on making the story into a webcomic. I still want to, but I'd rather get it written out and have that version be free, and then have the time to focus on actually making the comic look good, rather than scrambling to get it released. Speaking of my Ko-fi though, if you'd like to show your support for Our Future Fantasy or future videos on my channel, feel free to donate or commission me on there. Anything and everything is appreciated, and I'm more than willing to shout out donors at the end of the future videos. That's all for now. And if I continue this little introduction series of videos to Our Future Fantasy, I hope to see you there.